first movement in the relationship between God and man is always God's. No man ever reaches out to God first. God reaches out to him. That's your story. And it's a story of every person God has, who's ever come into any kind of contact with God. That's the story. God reached out to them, and they responded. They all responded, and you responded. Because you're here today, I'm going to assume that you responded correctly. You responded with a welcome. You said, yes, I agree with you, Father. I want to be in relationship with you. I want contact with you. I'm open to whatever you're saying to me. I open the door. You know, Jesus said in Revelation, stand at the door and knock. Anyone who hears the knock, God knocks first. The door is never opened first. God knocks first, and then the door is opened, and then the relationship begins. So it's kind of a transactional thing. God offers something, and we receive it by responding correctly. We respond with what? Obedience. And because he offers in grace and we respond with obedience, the relationship is established. And so we kind of settle down with that idea that this business of being God's and having God in our lives and experiencing all he has for us is kind of a transactional thing. God makes an offer and we receive it by being obedient. And when we are obedient, he what? He blesses us. In fact, the Bible says that. You do these things, God will bless you. You do these things, God will what? Curse you. Because why does the Bible say that God will curse you? Because he cannot bless disobedience. He only blesses obedience. That's the way the thing works. And we kind of settle down with that, and so we expect that. We want to hear from God so we can be obedient. Then he will give us what we want, or what we need. He knocks, we open. And the scripture is plain that that's the way it works. But these two examples give us the other side of the story, because we know there is another side of the story. Sometimes you obey and the blessings are not there. Why in the world should that be so? Because we already established that it's a give and take. And sometimes we give obedience because God has asked us for something, like the Israelites, like the disciples. Because these people were all in a situation they were in because they were being what? Obedient to what the Master had said. The scripture plainly says that God sent the Israelites to Meribah. They were at Rephidim because he had told them to go there. And when they arrived at the place where he had told them to go, after being obedient for all these days, they find that there is what? No water. It's a dry camp. You know what a dry camp is? A dry camp is you're making your place where you're making a temporary home and there is no water. If you didn't bring it with you, you don't have it. And there's no stream nearby, no river nearby, no lake nearby. You know, I was thinking about, I've been watching a lot of Westerns since I've been alone in my home. And I noticed something about the Westerns. Whether you talk about a wagon train or the outlaws or the heroes, when they go to camp, there's always a stream. There's always water running around. Why is that? So you can go over there and dip into it and use it. If you're out in the desert and you're making a dry camp, you already got a problem. And the Israelites have a huge problem because, in obedience to God, they've come to a place where they have to camp and there is no water. The disciples themselves were in the middle of the lake, straining at the oars against a contrary wind. Why? Because Jesus had said, get in the boat and go to the other side. And as soon as they began to obey, the wind was contrary, and it caused strain and chaos. God instructed them, and they obeyed. And yet, in spite of the fact that they were being obedient, they were in a chaotic situation that was out of their control. Both of these groups of people had no control over the end result of their obedience. God had brought something contrary into their lives through their obedience. And so it was so bad for the Israelites that they said, this situation is so threatening, so life-threatening, we even wonder if God sent us here. We even wonder if he's with us. Maybe he's not. And the answer, of course, to that question, is God with us or not, is very obvious. Yes, he is. He sent us here. And in the New Testament, he says, I am the Lord your God, and I am faithful to you, and I will never, 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 never leave you alone. And yet they were in a situation through their obedience that they had to even question whether or not even God was anywhere around. They'd been forced into a dry camp. You know what the eyes of our flesh see, our circumstances, is very powerful. You notice that, haven't you? What we see with our eyes, what we experience with our body, is a very powerful thing. It's hard to resist it. It's hard to not be controlled by what we see with our eyes. And it's easy to see the circumstances that we're in that we can't fix. We have no resources to meet the need that's real. It's easy to give in to our feelings of fear or deprivation or self-pity because we can't control them. It's easy to come up with questions that have no answers at 4 a.m. You know, I don't usually struggle with questions that don't have answers at 4 p.m. For some reason, it's not on my mind. It's not bothering me. It's not something I think about. It's not something I need answered. But at 4 a.m., I want answers. I want to know the answers to my question. And there is no answer at 4 a.m. That's where the Israelites are and the disciples are, in this chaotic situation that's out of their control. And they've actually done everything that they knew they should do. Yet here they are. These folks in the Old Testament had been, they knew that God worked miracles. They had seen for themselves. They saw Moses take this rod that he carried around all the time and hit the Nile River and it turned to blood. They saw him hold that rod over the Red Sea and wave it a couple times and mumble some prayers, and the water separated and they walked across on dry land. They had seen that with their own eyes. The chapter before, chapter 16, is where they were hungry out in the desert and God sent bread from heaven. Heavenly bread fell on the ground. They walked out, picked it up, and ate it. So the eyes of their flesh had seen the faithfulness of God and experienced it, but somehow in this place with a dry camp and no water, they couldn't see that anymore. They could only see the certain circumstances that they were in. And they were ready to give up on God and abandon his purposes. Why? Because their purpose, not being thirsty, was not being addressed. It was like a 4 a.m. situation. I'm thirsty. I don't see any water. God's nowhere. That's the 4 a.m. attitude. You guys are going to have a phobia about 4 in the morning when I'm done with this sermon. You're going to wake up to go to the bathroom and you won't be able to go back to sleep. But the preacher's awake at 4 a.m. struggling with things he can't answer. Now it's on me. Good. I hope you share it with me. We should ask a question, probably the obvious question. Well, in the Israelites' case, we know what they did. They started quarreling and saying God's not with us and God's abandoned us. What should they have done? What should they have done? What do you do when you set up camp and there's no water? It doesn't look like there's going to be any water. What should you do? Well, the Scripture's full of this. When you come to a place where there's no water, you make a camp, a dry camp, and you wait. There you go. You wait. Wait on the Lord. Where does that remind you of? Well, let's look at Isaiah. The Israelites were in this situation again because they were facing exile. And they were saying the same thing. God is not with us. He's abandoned us. That's why we're going into exile. He's nowhere. Why do you say, O Jacob, this is in chapter 40 of Isaiah, and complain, O Israel, my way is hidden from the Lord. My cause is disregarded by my God. God's nowhere. Do you not know? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He will not grow weary or tired. His understanding no one can fathom. He gives strength to the weary and increases the power of the weak. Even youths grow tired and weary, and young men stumble and fall. But those who wait on the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. What do you do when you come to a dry camp? Wait on the Lord. Now, there's some things about waiting that we ought to acknowledge. To wait on someone means I'm paying close attention to them. That's why we call them waiters. Especially when you go to a fancy restaurant, a nice place, the waiter has a towel over his arm. His job is to what? Pay attention to you. That doesn't mean he's standing by your elbow trying to force things on you, or that he's intrusive, or he's standing in the background, he's behind you, he's not bothering you at all until he sees you reach for your glass and it needs a little fill up. He's right there. He comes to take the dirty dishes away as soon as you put your fork down. As soon as you put your napkin on the table, he's there with the ticket. Why? He's waiting on you. That's an element of waiting that we need to have when we're waiting on the Lord. It means we're serving Him. We're waiting for Him to need something from us, and then as soon as we recognize that He needs something from us, we are waiting on Him. We serve Him. You know you can do that in a dry camp? You can do that when the wind's contrary. When you're straining and you can't control anything, you can pay attention to the Lord. And that's what you ought to be doing, waiting on Him. Sensitized is a good word. Sensitized to God. In fact, I think I probably could make a case for the fact that one of the reasons the Lord allows dry camps and contrary winds in our life is because we need to be sensitized to Him. If we didn't have dry camps and contrary winds, we wouldn't really be paying that much attention to what the Lord's doing. I mean, we got our own thing, right? We have our own purposes. We want to get to the other side of the lake. We want to get to the camp that has water. And so if we don't have that purpose interrupted by his purposes, it's not going to work very well. We need to be sensitized to God. And to wait also means when we're waiting on someone, we are surrendering our authority to them. We're giving them authority over us. That's why it's so aggravating and frustrating to wait on your spouse. Why is it so frustrating? Because when you're waiting on them, they're in control. They're the ones setting the timetable. They're the ones who are saying, we're not leaving yet. And you got purpose, oh, we're supposed to have been there 5 minutes ago. What's waiting? No. You're waiting. And you're giving control of yourself to them. Now, I'm talking here about somebody who's really sanctified and waits with the right spirit. But when you're talking about waiting on the Lord, that's exactly the spirit you need. You're waiting by giving him control of you in your situation. Waiting on the Lord. To wait on someone is to surrender authority to them and acknowledge their authority over you. And chapter 40 of Isaiah makes it very plain that waiting on the Lord is to put your hope in him. He's not here yet. I'm waiting. Why am I waiting? Because I have confidence that he's going to show up. I'm convinced that I can trust him to show up. I'm waiting on him. Now that means I can't wait with impatience. If I'm waiting on the Lord, if I really have confidence that he's coming, I don't wait by tapping my foot and wandering around and demanding answers at 4 a.m. Lord, I've waited on you quite a while now. Isn't it about time? Lord, when are you going to stop making me wait? You see the arrogance? That's not waiting. That's arrogance. That's self-centeredness. That's my purpose, not yours. God have mercy. God have mercy. How could a person like me make that demand of a holy God and say, I'm sick of waiting. I don't want to wait anymore. I'm not going to wait. You go down that road far enough, and you know what happens to you sooner or later? You stay in a dry camp forever. You stay in that boat rowing against a contrary wind from now on forever. That's the danger. No, root that spirit out. Wait. Why? Because you have confidence that he's showing up. I have confidence in his character. He will never leave me alone. He said so. I'm not alone. 4 a.m. all the way to 4:59 a.m. Doesn't matter. I'm waiting on the Lord. Now that kind of waiting requires perseverance. You have to wait and wait and wait some more. Do you know what Jesus said one time when he told a story about a widow lady who was persistent in prayer. She was persistent in going to the wicked judge and saying, I need justice, I demand justice, give me justice. And he refused and he refused and he refused. And she kept going back until the wicked judge got so sick of her, he said, give her what she's asking for. And Jesus said, this lady is an example to you. What do you mean by that? She never quit persisting in waiting. She persisted. And Jesus said, I wonder if there'll be faith of that kind on the earth when the Son of Man returns. Will there be anyone who has waited with persistence like that? And the question is, demands an answer is, I got to be that person who perseveres in waiting. So when obedience puts you in a dry camp, your eyes can't see the way out, wait on the Lord. That's what they should have done, but they did not. In Mark, the New Testament situation, the disciples were in a strain because of their obedience, and now the situation's out of their control. It's hard to keep going. They probably said, should we go back? Let's go turn around and go with the wind and go back where we started and rest and start tomorrow. No, Jesus said, go across. Maybe Jesus made a mistake. What's Jesus doing anyway? Is he really just interested in them getting across to the other side? Oh, of course not. That's their purpose. That's not his purpose. He told them to go, but that's not what he's really doing. He's not just trying to frustrate them or test them. Here we see a little more clearly what his purpose is. What is God doing when he asks us to obey anyway? Is it because he needs our little input into some big grand plan and it can't work if we don't cooperate? And so he tries to get us to obey so that he can bless us, and it's kind of transactional. If he can just manage to get us to be obedient, then he can bless us and things will happen and that it just aren't going to happen otherwise. I don't think so. When he asked me to obey in a dry camp with contrary winds, when he's saying, go to the other side, just go. And I have problems on the way. What he's really doing, he's trying to get me to trust him. He's trying to get me to see that my relationship with him is not transactional. It's not give and take. I do something for him and he does something for me. No, my relationship with him is he pours himself out for my sake and invites me to pour myself out for his sake. It's a love relationship. He doesn't bless me because I've been obedient. He blesses me because he loves me. And I obey him not because I'm going to get something for it, but because I love him. And the disciples weren't in a place where they could understand that. And the Israelites weren't in a place they could understand it. And when God put them in a dry camp and again contrary winds, he was giving them an opportunity to learn that lesson. And could it be that maybe that's something he's trying to teach me? When I've kind of lapsed into the idea that this whole relationship with God is a transactional thing. And what he really wants more than anything is my obedience. He can't live without my obedience. Well, he can live without my obedience, but I can't. Because my obedience opens the door for him to do what he's really wanting to do for me. I think he wanted the disciples. This is a crazy story. You think that the story would be like this. They get into contrary winds. They're wearing out. They're about to give up. So Jesus sees them in trouble and he walks out to them and saves them. He didn't do that. It says plainly that he saw what was happening and he was going to walk past them. He was going to ignore them. Well, that doesn't sound like Jesus, does it? I like a Jesus that sees me struggling. Oh, he's rowing hard. Let's go save him, Father. Run out there, grab the boat, and put it on the land. Jesus sees them, knows they're struggling, walks out on the water, and walks right by them. He's going over the other side where they're supposed to be. What in the world does that mean? It just means that Jesus is doing something they're not, they're concerned about the contrary wind and getting to the other side, and Jesus is concerned about them seeing him walking on their circumstances. They're in chaotic circumstances, out of their control. They can't fix any of it. He wants them to see him walking over the top of their circumstances. And that he's with them, right beside them in the circumstances, but he's on top of the circumstances. That's why it's a strange little comment at the end of the story where it says the disciples had not understood about the loaves. How do you not understand that? It was a miracle from God. They didn't understand. They didn't what? They didn't learn the lesson. And the lesson is God's provision is always available and it's always on time. That was the lesson of the loaves and fishes. And they didn't get the lesson. So he gave them another lesson. Get in the boat and go to the other side, and the wind is going to make it hard. But if you look over here to the right, you're going to see me walking on top of the wind and the waves and all those things that are defeating you. I'm on top of them. So with Israel asked, is the Lord with us or not? That's not really the right question. The right question is, will I trust Jesus, not when I get to the other side, and not when the water comes out of the rock, but will I trust Jesus now in my dry camp when the wind is contrary? Many times God allows obedient people to get into those out of control situations, those chaotic situations, because he's trying to teach us something. And whether he engineered the situation or not doesn't really matter. When we're in that situation, he's trying to teach us that he's walking on top of it, right beside us, always. And our obedience is what opens the door for him to have that relationship with us that he really wants. I don't know what your contrary winds look like. I don't know what your dry camp looks like. Whether it's an internal thing or an external thing, external circumstance. I can tell you from personal experience that most of the time, I can't discern what he's doing until after. I can't discern, I can't see the hand of God. I can't see his purpose being accomplished. I can't see what he's trying to do until I'm through it and I look back on it. After I get the cool water to drink, and after the winds die down, then I look back and say, oh, I see you were there. You were doing things I didn't know. And you've done things I didn't know, and you were always there, even though I didn't know. I found that in my experience with Betty. That last 2 weeks was horrific. For me internally, not just the circumstances, but I had no control over anything. Had no idea about the wise thing to do, or the smart thing to do, or the best thing to do. I was in a chaotic situation, completely out of my control. And I couldn't see the hand of God anywhere on it. I knew he was there. I trusted that he was there, but I had no evidence. And then, at the end, And I look back through some of that stuff. It was so plain how God had been part of it and how God had taken care of things that I hadn't even thought about and worked out details that I had no idea needed to be worked out. It was like I could see from this side of it the things that he had always been doing that I couldn't see before. I have an idea. I'm not making a promise to you because I'm not qualified to do that, but I have an idea that your contrary wind is going to be the same. Whatever it is. If you belong to the Lord and you wait on him, at the end of this thing, you're going to look back through it and see how close his hand was with your hand. How tight he was with you. And you're going to be grateful that you waited on him. Let's pray.